Mastering a mirror, countering the control players, and taking on the unbeatable brood scale. We've got some great stuff in episode 5 of Noob to Master, and that all starts right now. Today we updated our deck list with Merchant of the Veil. This is going to be another way to get fatties into the graveyard quick and consistently and enable our plan A. For those of you wondering what this deck's plan is, let me give you a quick tutorial. Our plan A is to use discard effects like Merchant of the Veil to put Archon in the graveyard. Once we do that, we can then use either Emperor of the Bones or Persist to reanimate them back onto the battlefield. Archon comes in, attacks, and our opponent loses all of their cards in hand and loses all of their life. They die. Our first match, we're up against Blue-Black Frog. This is a fair matchup, and our plan is to play like a fair deck ourselves with a little bit of an unfair twist. We want to avoid card disadvantage like Faithless Looting and Unburied Grave, and instead focus on the fair elements of our deck like Psychic Frog, Oculus, Fatal Push, Thoughtseize. We still have a good edge because these reanimate spells are efficient ways to have more threats than our opponent. We keep this first hand knowing that Frog is a good way to start, and we have 2 reanimate spells just looking for a creature to get into the bin. We decide to top a Thought Scour that's just more looks at our opponent's potential reanimate threats. Our opponent starts with Thoughtseize, which makes me think, okay, this could be a mirror, but after they take Frog, we go ahead and unearth Frog. They Force of Negation, which tells us that this is not a mirror, this is actually Blue-Black Frog, and then they play a Frog of their own. Interesting because they knew we had Fatal Push, but we just go ahead and Fatal Push the Frog and pass back to them. We set up with a Surveil land. We're still looking for a Reanimate spell or a potential Reanimate target. We decide that the Oculus will be good enough, so we keep a second Persist just in case they have a counter spell, and Reanimate the Oculus, and that's good to get us the win. Sideboarding, our plan here is to get more fair. We bring out Merchant of the Veil, Unmarked Grave, Emperor of Bones, and a Faithless Looting, which are all card disadvantage, and then we go ahead and bring in some removal and counters. I almost think to keep this hand, but keeping a 5-land hand is asking for trouble. We decide to mulligan, keep a pretty proactive 6 that includes Thoughtseize, and then a potential turn 3 Oculus, thanks to Thought Scour. Our opponent plays a Frog, we have the Fatal Push, and we continue to set up. We don't need a second Oculus, so we go ahead and bin it, and we pass back. We know their hand has 2 Fatal Pushes, so no reason to rush out the Oculus into a known Fatal Push. We decided to play it slow instead, hoping to maybe make their hand a little bit awkward. They end up Thoughtseizing us, but that's completely fine. Again, no reason to cast Unearth when we know they can make a clean trade with the Fatal Push, so I just pass back. I'm keeping an eye on their graveyard, expecting they could have Oculus in hand. As soon as they get to 6 cards in graveyard, I'm going to use this Nihil Spellbomb, but until then, no time to wait, no reason to rush. They play a Quantum Riddler, which is fine, but it does put some pressure on us to do something soon because they could hardcast this Riddler and we can't kill it. We decide to flashback Looting, and that gets a Force of Negation out of their hand. Then we play Frog, knowing that eventually we are going to have to play through these Fatal Pushes at this point. If we can get them to use them, then we can cycle the Spellbomb faster, which is going to help us get lands. We can actually hardcast this Archon potentially very soon. Here I make a bit of a mistake. I decided to hold on the Spellbomb, hoping to get max value from it, but I should have cracked it in the off chance that I draw Fatal Push, and I do draw Fatal Push. I decided to Fatal Push the Frog now, and step just in case we draw a land, we'd want to hardcast Archon, but instead we draw a Persist, and we persist an Oculus back into play. This ends up taking over the game, and we win that game. Our next match is against Blue-White Control. Our starting 7 isn't very good because it doesn't have much interaction, and if these Fatal Pushes are bad, we're going to be in trouble. We decide to go ahead and click the Mulligan button. After mulliganing, our 6 looks a lot better. We don't have a Persist for the Archon, but we do have a way to get it in the graveyard, plus Thoughtseize is universally going to be a strong way to interact with the opponent. Without rushing into it, we start on Thoughtseize just to get an idea of what we're dealing with. We see the counterspell and the subtlety. Not a very strong hand, honestly, so we're feeling fine with that. We decide to ditch the Haggle and the Archon, keeping the card advantage plus that 3rd land in case we need to flashback Looting later. We top an Oculus, seeing how this could be just a good fair play, but we aren't able to do it right away. We thought scour ourselves and get lucky to find a persist. That lets us put Archon into play, which is going to give us a quick advantage in this game. From there, they go ahead and Solitude our Archon, so they have a clean answer. That kind of showcases that in a matchup with Solitude, Archon is usually not the best answer, especially when that matchup is against a control deck without many creatures. I think that boarding out Archon could be a fair plan for this matchup. But back to our game, we were able to reanimate 2 Oculuses, and now we take a quick 1-0 lead because of that. Cutting Fatal Push is a priority here. Mystical Dispute's an obvious add, and Consigned to Memory is mostly just to stop Solitude. We aren't really able to cut Archon with our current sideboard plan, but we do know that it's not as reliable, and we're looking for hands that are focused on Thoughtseize plus Psychic Frog as our most powerful draws, but, we'll still have the opportunity to get Archon into play. We end up keeping a pretty decent hand with Thoughtseize, Mystical Dispute, and Psychic Frog. The issue is it doesn't have a second land. I figured on the draw, with that extra draw step and the ability to fetch a Surveil, we could take a risk. Also, Blue-White Control is going to have a hard time punishing you for missing land drops, especially when you can Thoughtseize a Mystical Dispute their early plays if they do have any. We end up going for Thoughtseize, holding up Mystical Dispute, and we feel pretty fine with this position. We did draw another Persist, which is not what we wanted to draw, but we still have time like we know. We get lucky and Surveil and Archon into the bin, and all of a sudden, we feel really good about having 3 Persists in hand. But I start with Psychic Frog knowing they could hardcast Force of Negation. My plan is to make them Prismatic Ending on their turn, and then if they want a Force of Negation persist, they're going to have to pitch cast it. This is just the better way to go about things here. Instead, they decide to cast Stock Up. So they're letting us untap with Frog. That to me signals that they do plan on solituding, and yes, they do solitude here. We know they still have the Fawn, so there's a decent chance we get Fawned, but we've now 2-for-1'd them twice, which means that they are completely down multiple cards even after the stock up. We do have the second Persist, putting the Archon into play, but their last card is Solitude. They do have to sacrifice the Solitude at least, and we draw another Archon, which we can then haggle away, and then we can go ahead and Persist a third time. They're probably just about done with our Persists, but we're not done with them yet. They go ahead, cast stock up. They don't find Solitude, so we get the win there. Our final match of this episode is our nemesis, Broodscale. We know that we can't be faster than them, so we do have to interact. So we're looking for hands that have Thoughtseize and Fatal Push, and also a quick way to reanimate something because they don't have many answers for our threats. If we can find that perfect mix, then we're going to be in good shape to win this match, but we do need to mulligan aggressively to do so. Unfortunately, we didn't know we were playing Broodscale, so we keep a hand that is very proactive but does not have a lot of reaction. Fortunately, we draw a Fatal Push. Now we're in a pretty good spot. They start with Rumble, getting a spawn, and we go ahead and jam a Frog. Sorry, we unearth Oculus. I should know what happens because this is a replay. Anyways, we unearth Oculus and they go ahead and on their turn, they're going to play Eldrazi Temple, which is perfect because it allows them to ramp enough mana to cast Kozilek's Command, exiling the Oculus and scrying. But we're not afraid. We still have plenty of fuel left in the tank. We start by playing a Frog and a Surveil land, setting up for next turn and putting some pressure on the opponent. We know it's going to be hard for them to combo this turn, so we took the chance to develop a threat. Then next turn, we'll disrupt them with Thoughtseize and Fatal Push. They just go with a Riddling Chrysalis. That's a pretty good card, but in this spot, it's not going to be enough. We're able to Thoughtseize the last creature in their hand, and then Fatal Push the Chrysalis. We give Frog Flying because we don't want to let them trade a spawn for a card in our hand, and we end up playing a second Frog. Drawing the Archon means we are going to have some potential to be able to combo off and reanimate, especially because they have to cycle the Soul Guide land turn because they've run out of gas. Thinking here for a second, I would think we could start this turn with Haggle and see where we go from there, but we could also just start by attacking. Go ahead and start by haggling. We find a second Oculus, so none of the cards in our hand are very castable. Good news, we'll be getting some new cards shortly with these Psychic Frogs. They decide to let both of them hit us. We go ahead and Thought Scour ourselves off one of the draws, and then are able to hardcast an Oculus. Now we're really running away with the game. We do have to be careful because their next turn they're going to find a blade, and then they could just draw a potential brood scale for the win. They do just go for a Kozilek's command here to exile the Oculus, but the good news is we still have 2 active frogs in play, which is going to give us more than enough gas. Fatal Push is a good card to hold on to take away their potential combo elements. And now we just need to figure out how to close this game out as quickly as possible while holding up our disruption. Faithless Looting gets rid of an unmarked grave and an Archon, and then we can fetch, get a Surveil land. Still looking to find something to do with all this mana, but we just go ahead, play a second Oculus out, maximizing clock and ensuring that our opponent's dead next turn with Fatal Push up as protection. They go ahead and play another Chrysalis. That's going to give them some blockers, but probably not enough to actually survive here. Until they play a second Chrysalis, and now all of a sudden they have plenty of blockers and plenty of defenders. Still, I felt pretty good about this position at this point, thinking, well, they could draw a Kozilek's command, but I don't think that there's anything else that's super threatening, and we can probably just wait until next turn and then kill them. What I didn't anticipate was this, Emrakul, the Promised End. They go ahead and cast Emrakul, and we are going to meet our Promised End very quickly here. All you can do now is sit back and watch as they take our turn. I decide to go ahead and Fatal Push one of their spawns just so that they can't Fatal Push our own creature, but it's really just delaying the inevitable. When they take our turn, we make some very bad attacks, sending in the frogs and the Oculus into all of their very big blockers. And I think at this point, I realize that there's no draw step getting me out of this one. They end up discarding and exiling my graveyard, so I can't even draw Emperor of Bones. That's very smart of them. Don't leave an Archon in the graveyard, and I just go ahead and concede. Sideboarding, I bring in the Consigned to Memories, and I bring out the Unmarked Graves. That will bring in some amount of graveyard hate plus the natural Kozilek's commands they already have main deck, so it didn't seem great to me. Really, we're just trying to find ways to have a pretty strong plan A, but Consign is a great way to interact better with them as our plan B. Keeping another one-lander, I seem to be feeling very frisky in this video. We do have looting, so I can't give myself too much credit, and we have a Thought Scour. They start strong out of the gates with a Brood Skill on their turn 1 thanks to a Gemstone Caverns, but they are down to 4 cards in hand, which is the cost of Gemstone Caverns. And with our reactive hand, I don't feel terrible about this. We push the Brood Scale now to avoid any shenanigans, and then we set up for Thought Scour. We're able to persist an Archon, which is pretty lucky. Whenever Thought Scour mills over Archon or Oculus, it's just such a broken card. Unfortunately, it doesn't do that all the time, which is why we have Faithless Looting and Haggles in our deck. But on the chances that it does, again, very broken card. We're clearly taking the lead in this game. They don't really have any answers to a potential Archon, so every time we untap with it, we're just going to continue to make them discard, sacrifice creatures, and they have really no way to gain any footing. So it's just going to be a matter of time before they just go ahead and concede. They refuse to give up. All right, there. Finally, they go ahead and concede. And we're going into game number 3, finally hoping to take down our nemesis. But can we do it, especially on the draw? An awkward hand here. We have 2 reanimate spells, but we do have 2 consigns. I really keep this hand because of the consigns, and then I hope that we can find a creature as, a way to then turn on these reanimates. Now that we drew Oculus, Faithless Looting is a live draw as well, so that feels pretty nice. Though I decide to get rid of the frog because I know we can already unearth it and then hold up Consign. So we do unearth the frog. We go ahead, and then we can persist the Oculus with Consign up. This worked out absolutely perfectly with that Surveil land. We were able to unearth a frog and then persist an Oculus, holding up Consign to Memory both times. I decided to keep this Fleshraker off the table. It's going to really slow them down if we do so. And just know that we continue to draw cards with Frog. We end up finding a Thoughtseize And with Thoughtseize on the stack, our opponent concedes the game. 3-0, baby. We did it. That was an epic ending to the Noob to Master series. I do feel like we learned a lot about this deck. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Looking back over the video, 2 hours of editing later, it was a great video to make. If you did enjoy it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you for more Merc Guide videos. Peace.